I'm Dr. Cath Watson, and today PD Insurance has asked me to talk to you about poisons you might find or might be surprised to hear that are a risk to cats and dogs. So I'm going to cover 5 broad categories: food poisons, household products, plants, garden products that you might be surprised to hear are toxic, and medicines. So just a note here, cats versus dogs, generally the risk is to both. For dogs, mostly we tend to think about poisons that they're going to eat, but it can be poisons that they come in contact with as well. For cats, while they can eat some poisons, they do tend to be much fussier. So the bigger risk for cats is stuff that ends up on their coat that then they lick off. So they're still ingesting them, but maybe not necessarily choosing to eat them. It's just part of their cleaning routine. So when it comes to foods that are toxic, I think most people are aware that chocolate is toxic to dogs. It is also to cats, but they do tend to be fussier. But anything containing caffeine actually is a problem. The other one that maybe we're not so aware of is raisins and grapes. So this can be in fruitcakes as well. This is particularly for dogs. We actually don't know what the toxin is, and it appears that not all dogs are susceptible, but it will cause acute renal failure. So best to avoid because we've got no way of telling which dog's susceptible, which is not. Things like garlic and onions can lead to anemia in both cats and dogs, so that leftover stew, if it's full of onions or full of garlic, then maybe think twice about giving it to your dog or your cat to eat. Also for dogs only, macadamia nuts. Again, don't know why dogs specifically are susceptible, but keep the macadamia nuts away from your dogs. The other one which you may be aware of is xylitol, which is a sugar replacement in many products, particularly things like chewing gum, is quite toxic to dogs, so make sure you read the labels. It can be in some peanut butters, so just make sure you know what's on the label and ideally use a peanut butter that's high quality if you're going to use it for training for your dog. A couple of other things you may not be aware on the food front for dogs: yeast dough can be quite dangerous. So if you're into making bread, making sure you don't leave the dough somewhere that's accessible to your dog, because they will find it really tasty, but it can certainly cause them issues. And interestingly, citrus peel, seeds, stems, leaves can also be an issue for dogs. So keep those out of reach, and particularly if you've got a dog who likes getting into the compost bin and you live in an area where there's lots of citrus grown, just make sure that your compost bin is dog safe, which is sensible advice irrespective, because actually there's a whole bunch of stuff in compost bins which can cause fairly major tummy upsets if they like to get stuck in there. As far as your household products, being aware of cleaning fluids, so things like Dettol, bleach, all of those cleaning products, particularly if they're concentrated, not only an issue if they're ingested, but like I said earlier, with cats getting stuff on their coats, they're going to clean those up afterwards, can end up with some pretty nasty ulcers on tongues. But also if you've just cleaned the floors with bleach, being aware that their pads can be quite sensitive and you may end up with some skin irritation or even ulcers on the pads on their feet, which is obviously going to make them pretty sore walk around the place. Also things like beauty products, so hair dye, nail polish, suntan lotions, and maybe if you're redecorating at home, so paint products, varnish, white spirits, not leaving those sort of things around as accessible to cats and dogs. Again, cats more getting stuff on their coats, dogs particularly if you're renovating and perhaps the house has been painted with lead-based paints in the past. Lead poisoning can be a major issue as well. I shouldn't say that's just for dogs, that's both for dogs and cats. So any heavy metals are going to be an issue around home as well. Then there's just the random things like mothballs and shoe polish. So any of those things that maybe smell a bit funny to us and you wouldn't ingest yourself, making sure they're out of reach of pets. So same ethos when it comes to pets as to kids. If it's not safe, keep it out of reach, and it needs to be properly out of reach and somewhere that they're not hanging out. Then we come into plants. So the big one for cats, which again a lot of people are not aware of, is lilies. So every part of the lily is toxic to cats, from the petals, the leaves, the stems, and even the pollen. So if you have a cat, I would strongly recommend you not grow lilies, and I would strongly recommend you don't get lilies as a part of a flower decoration in your house. They are extremely toxic to cats and will cause renal failure, so keep them well away. For dogs, there's a number of plants, sago plants, tulips, aloe plants, variety of toxic mushrooms, because I don't know about you, but while there's all sorts of guides out there as to what's okay to eat and what's not for mushrooms, I'm never quite sure. So just be aware if your dog's out foraging in ideal mushroom growing conditions that they may well eat a mushroom that's not good for them. But also things like foxglove and oleander and even azaleas can be toxic to dogs. It's amazing what they want to chew on. Then we've got our garden products that we like to use to get rid of pests. So most of you be well aware that rat bait's a risk. It's actually not a risk immediately on eating. Often it's a risk 5 to 7 days down the track because it stops the blood clotting. So you may not see an immediate effect, but if you know particularly your dog has eaten rat bait, then it is best to do something about it sooner rather than later, i.e. ideally within 4 hours. For cats, it may be less obvious, but if you know that you have lots of rats and mice around and you've got rat bait out and it's killing them, and your cat likes to hunt and eat those mice and rats, then just be aware there can be secondary poisoning as well. Slug bait is another big one. There are some pet-safe slug deterrents, but the commonly used ones that have metaldehyde in them are highly toxic and will cause liver failure. So just be really pet aware whenever you're buying any products to control pests in your garden. So things like fungicides and insecticides can also be an issue. When it comes to medicines, obviously keep all of your own medications out of reach. There are some specific issues with some human medications in cats and dogs, but probably the big ones that maybe we don't think of. So paracetamol in cats. Paracetamol is otherwise known as Panadol in a lot of cases. So paracetamol in cats can be toxic at quite low doses. So even if you're feeling sorry for your cat that it's in pain, please don't consider giving them paracetamol. In dogs, it's actually ibuprofen. And again, small doses can cause quite major issues. So if your dog's in pain, please don't just reach for your own ibuprofen. Get some advice as to what's best to give. When it comes to other human medications, obviously things like antidepressants and so on can be a problem. Just keep them out of reach. And finally, just want to talk about dog flea treatments that contain permethrin. So these products are safe to use on dogs. They are not safe to use on cats. Please don't use dog flea products on cats because you can certainly have toxic effects, including neurologic signs, seizures, that sort of stuff. So make sure if you're treating cats for fleas, use a proper cat flea product. I would also strongly advise that you don't use things like essential oils because many of the commonly used essential oils like tea tree oil, eucalyptus oil, clove oil are actually toxic to cats and dogs as well. They're not really any good as flea treatments, so just keep them well out of reach.